Hello, Year 11s. Right, this is the next in my series of revision videos based on AQA English Language Paper 2. And just to remind you all that we are working through the November 2018 paper, which is freely available to download from the AQA website. And I'll put the link down in the description underneath. So if you haven't already, you can either print off a copy of that exam paper or you can have it open on the screen next to you as you are working through this video. Today we're going to look at a really tricky question on paper 2, and that is question 4. And what I would call question 4 is something called a synoptic question. And what the word synoptic means is it brings together all the other skills that you've used on all of your English language reading, and it brings it all together. And that's why it's quite a tricky question. So it's using the skills of analysing, and it's using the skills of being able to pick out the methods that the writer uses. It's including the skills of comparing and synthesizing information, so talking about two things at the same time. It's also asking you to do something slightly different, and that is to really think about like the mood that the writer is in when they wrote each paragraph of their writing, what their viewpoints and what their perspectives are. And that's why it's really important, because that's the topic and the focus of the entire paper. So it is a tricky question, and it's meant to be tricky because it's testing everything that you've learnt in English language, well, since year reception, really. So it's bringing together everything that you've ever learned about English and literacy. And in actual fact, if you think about your literature exam too, it's even tapping in on some of those literature skills. So being able to know what kind of mood and tone the writer is creating, to know about what kind of message the writer is trying to send out to you because of the way that they feel about something, and being able to compare two texts together. So because it is quite tricky, that makes it quite tricky for me to just say, right, you must do it like this. But in a way, I am going to try to do that. So you've got a little bit of structure. And between now and your real exam in June, hopefully you'll get lots more practice doing this kind of analysis. And maybe some of the scaffolding that I'm going to put in place for you, and some of the things to help jog your memory, you'll be able to not rely on those so much, not have to write a detailed plan, and just be able to go straight into your analysis and kind of know instinctively how you need to annotate your paper and what you need to do for this question. So practice makes perfect. As I always say, English language is like doing a marathon, but doing it at the pace of a sprint. That's what the best students can do on these papers. But at the moment, you certainly can't run a marathon. You need to put the training in first. And that's what this is all about. Okay, so let's have a look at question 4 then. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. So both of those articles about cycling in our case. And the question is, compare how the writers convey their similar perspectives on cycling in the city. So you can see in November 2018, it was all about similar perspectives. Sometimes it's about different perspectives, so make sure that you are reading the question. However, it also does say compare, so it can be quite tricky comparing things that are similar. So obviously you're looking for similarities, but maybe you will analyze those similarities in different ways. Perhaps they're doing similar things but for a different reason, or perhaps they're doing different things to make a similar point or to prove that their perspective is similar. Okay, so here's our focus then: similar perspectives and cycling in the city. That's what we're focusing on. Now, if you watched my video on question 2, the SQI question, remember the focus there was all on the drivers. So you can see there is a subtle difference between question 2 and question before. So that was focused on the drivers. This one's focused on the cyclists. Okay, cycling in the city. So if we have a look at the bullet points, these are so useful. You must use the bullet points, and this is what they mean. It says compare the similar perspectives on cycling in the city. And if you have a look up here, there's different ways that you can think about perspective. So the word they use is perspective. Sometimes on the exam they'll put their similar views or their similar points of view about. Sometimes you might want to translate that into your head, into opinions. What are their opinions on cycling in the city? That might be a word that is easier for you to grasp. And then if you're struggling with all of those quite abstract words, you could just revert to what are their thoughts and what are their feelings about. Okay, and that can be an easier way to think about it. So compare their similar thoughts and feelings about cycling in the city. And thinking about thoughts and feelings can just make it a lot more tangible for you, a lot more easier to grasp. The second one you get lots and lots of marks for. Compare the methods the writers use to convey their perspective. And again, back to that word synoptic, this is all about bringing all of your skills together. A couple of mnemonics that we use are a compass, and that's all your descriptive writing terms. So things like adjectives, alliteration, adverbs, contrast, onomatopoeia, metaphor, personification, adverbs, adjectives, and so on. Again, similes, sibilants, using the senses, are they appealing to the senses? So all those descriptive writing techniques you could be looking for, those are all methods. Or you could be looking for the dark forest devices, the persuasive devices, things like direct address or anecdote, rhetorical questions, acknowledging the opposition, flattery, opinions. We said rhetorical questions, so it must be repetition, emotive language, exaggeration, the expert giving their advice, statistics, and the threes. So those are all methods that writers use, but the method might be something even simpler than that. The method might be really powerful verbs, or the method might be a stacking up of a certain kind of nouns. The method might be a semantic field where you get lots of words with like from a similar field of knowledge. You might get semantic fields being used in a particular piece of writing, and you can pick out all the words and analyze those together for their cumulative effect. So this is these first two are our real driving focuses for this question, the perspectives and the methods. But then, of course, it goes without saying you must support your response with reference to both texts. So you've got to talk about source A and then source B, and then obviously references means quotations or evidence. So you need to bring in those quotations, not just from source A, but from source A and source B. So this is the mnemonic. Again, it's kind of a variation on PEA. So it's really, really similar to PEA, but it's just getting you to make sure that you're talking about those methods. And you can see that our P here has changed from just point to point of view. And I'm suggesting that you should try and use a mood word when you're thinking about the point of view. That can be a really good way to stay focused on the perspective of the writer, not what you think. They don't care what you think. It's about what the writer thinks and how they're getting that message across. Okay, it's about the writer, not about you. Okay, so point of view, evidence, method, and then analyze or zoom in on the method that's been used or the words inside that phrase. Okay, so that's what you could do. Thinking about methods, it doesn't just have to be language either. It could be the way that their argument is structured. So it could be they both start off in a certain way, and that could be the structure of the piece. It could be that they both repeat similar ideas. But language is the one that we think of first when we think about methods. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see what I've done here. Eventually, in June, when you're reading through your sources in that first 15 minutes of the exam, you're going to do this straight away because you'll be so well trained by then. But for now, I'm going to ask you for your question 5 to go back to source A and source B and do this. You're going to read each paragraph kind of as quickly as you can. You should know the text quite well by now. And just annotate by the side. I'd be actually doing it over here in the exam, but for my typing it works better over here. What kind of mood words can you use to describe each section? So this guy, what's he called? Peter Walker, he starts off, ask most people who ride a bike regularly in the UK, they'll happily recount a list of terrifying or alarming incidents caused by the deliberate actions of another road user, usually someone in a motor vehicle. I've put serious there. You could also add accusatory, so it's like he's accusing these motor vehicle drivers here. Then he goes on to give a personal anecdote. My last such incident happened just under a week ago. And in this bit, he seems really irritated and annoyed. Okay, so remember, our focus is cycling in the city. Compare the writers convey their similar perspectives. So here he's irritated and annoyed. In the next one, I've put he's quite mocking, but also quite shocked as well. And if you see here, I caught up with the driver at the next junction. So he's like almost mocking the driver there. But then he says he decided to dice for my chances of making it home safely, and they'd all been for nothing. That's appallingly common. So that adverb then creates a really shocked mood. So again, the point of view of the writer is he's shocked about the way other road users treat people who are cycling in the city. In this one, he gives some facts, doesn't he? The average Briton would ride 2 million miles before they suffered a serious injury. And he delivers these facts in a calm mood. So his point of view is calm as he's giving us these facts. You might choose totally different mood words, and that's fine. I've gone on here to say he's being sensible in this one. So he's being realistic might be another word that I could use there. Sensible, realistic. It's like people who cycle drive cars as well. So we can't just say that all car users hate all cyclists because that would be silly. And this one, I've put he's being quite sarcastic. He's talking about rude people, and he's saying rude people drive cars, go on trains, go on planes, and they're just rude wherever they go. And he's blaming them. He's kind of blaming a large minority of people. So he's being sarcastic and he's throwing blame around, and that's his point of view. Again, here he's been quite sensible and factual here, but this time he's showing how shocking those facts are about the power of a car and the damage that a car can cause compared to the damage a bike can cause. So he's giving facts, but he's giving those facts out, not in a calm, sensible way this time, but in a shocking way. And then in this one, he's concerned. He feels like the police don't take it seriously enough, and he seems a little bit angry about like the whole system that's in place, basically. So he's not blaming the drivers, but he's quite angry that cyclists have to suffer so much danger because like the systems and the laws that set up don't protect them. And then what he does is something that I always get you guys to do in your writing, and that is to, you spend most of the article kind of saying this is what the problem is, but then at the end of the article you start giving some advice out. Well, okay, there's problems. What are we going to do about it? So this next little bit, he's given out warnings. If a cyclist is holding you up, I'd urge you to keep these things clear in your mind and say, think about this. So he's trying to warn and advise, maybe educate a little bit, and that's what he does, and says, do this. And then at the end, he gets kind of quite emotive again about things, and he's saying, you could actually kill someone one day. So he's quite cross at the end. He's almost threatening and saying, do you really want that on your conscience? That's how he ends his piece. So you can see I've just talked you through that, and it probably took me about 5 minutes to talk you through. Doing this kind of annotation is something that you need to build towards, just embedding that in your reading time at the beginning of the exam, but for now you might need to take a little bit more time. Maybe your answer for question 4 won't be quite so long at the moment, but you'll pick up the pace and embed these good reading habits, so you're like marking the paper as you're reading. Let's have a look at the other text then. So it's our Victorian Countess. She starts off a bit sarcastic as well. So that's something. And you'll find that when you get onto source B and start annotating, you're going to start seeing the similarities and the differences straight away. So she's being sarcastic at the beginning. He leaves the sarcasm until the middle there, but they're both being sarcastic. She's quite emotive. She's been emotive at the beginning. He's been emotive at the end. So that's a method as well. She goes in with the emotional sarcasm. He ends with the emotion and sarcasm. So that's a really good thing that you could put in a paragraph. And when you're reading through, hopefully you'll train your mind. So in June, you'll be able to do that. Okay, she shows her resilience, she shows her confidence about cycling in the city, but then when she actually cycles in the city, she comes across as broken. That's her point of view of cycling in the city. It's incredibly stressful and it could leave you virtually broken. And here her point of view is, this happened to me, make sure it doesn't happen to you. So again, she's warning and advising. But do you notice, although both of them, Peter, what's his name in the previous source, and the Countess in this one, they both give warnings and advice, but whereas she is doing it to her reader, ladies like her who are just starting to learn how to cycle, Peter in A, he's giving his warning to drivers of vehicles and saying, be careful you don't kill a cyclist. So her point of view is very much towards ladies like her. His point of view is like drivers of cars and lorries and stuff don't do this. Okay, so you see they're kind of focusing their argument at different people. So similarity but a difference there. In this paragraph, this is different. He doesn't really do too much like this. Her point of view is, I need to learn more about cycling in the city. I need to know my rights. So she learns and she knows her rights, and that's her point of view. And that makes her feel stronger and more confident when she knows that. But in this one, she gets annoyed and irritated about the way she's being treated. When she's cycling in the city, she's being treated badly by other drivers. And that's really similar to over here. So he gets irritated and annoyed as well. And what is it that makes you irritated and annoyed? Both of them. It's a similarity. It's the drivers. So although I don't want you to repeat your answer to question 2, you can see that there will be similarities to question 2. But a student once said to me, I didn't answer question 4 because I was just repeating things that I'd said in question 2. And I'm like, oh my God. Question 2 is worth 8 marks. This question is worth 16 marks. Repeat the points, but just analyse the language. If you have to, if you really feel like you've got to repeat a point, repeat the point, but analyse the methods at the same time, please. Don't just go, I'm not doing it because it's the same. It's not the same. You just have to tweak it and twist it to the other answer. Okay, so how does she go on? Annoyed and irritated. Here, she's talking about the way that she cycles in the city, and she's cycling sensibly and cautious, and that's her point of view. Look at me being sensible and cautious. And then she acknowledges that other drivers don't really like it. And then she has a bit of a near miss in this paragraph, but she's actually helped out by some drivers, so she's really grateful. And then at the end, she ends with a little bit of humour at the end. So she does use humour. So her point of view is, you might as well make a joke about this situation. Whereas the guy who wrote source A, he doesn't really make any jokes at all. So that's something that you might want to think about. Her attitude to cycling in the city is, well, you've got to laugh because otherwise you'll cry. Whereas his attitude is like, don't laugh, you might kill someone. Be careful. So quite a difference there in their point of view, but they're both making similar points. Yeah, you might come off your bike because actually cycling in the city is quite dangerous. Okay, so annotating up. And again, I haven't spent quite the 5 minutes on this, probably only about 2 or 3 minutes. But again, that should be embedded within your reading time at the beginning, looking at the focus. Hopefully you see why now it's so important to have a quick scan through the exam paper, that exam technique, to find out what question, what focus is coming up. Right, so here is a grid that might help you. So you can see how what I'm going to do is jump from A to B, then A to B, and then A to B. I reckon doing that 3 times is probably good. If you can do 2 really, really good ones, that might be absolutely ample. What I've done on this sheet just here is I've put some of the key words from the question. We're talking about perspectives, we're talking about how they're similar, and our focus is cycling in the city. Okay, and I've gone in first that the writer of Source A is sarcastic towards idiots on all kinds of transport. You might be thinking, how's that about cycling in the city? Well, he links it back to cycling in the city, doesn't he? Because he's saying it like idiots are idiots, whatever walk of life they're in. So don't be one of these idiots when you're thinking about cyclists in the city. And then she is sarcastic about cabmen. And again, we need to be linking that back to cyclists in the city. So cabmen are the ones that she says have been chasing ladies on bikes in the city. So that's what she's concerned about there. So linking that back. I've found some evidence to support this sarcasm. All of these forms of transport are populated by roughly similar proportions of idiots. That's what he says. He's really blunt. I've called that pejorative language. So pejorative means when you deliberately use language to make something sound harsh and to show that you are not approving of that kind of behaviour, that you see pejorative language. But then he also gives some really useful verbs as well: push, barge and recline. So I put verbs down there. So a couple of quotations to back up the fact that he has got a sarcastic perspective on the way that people treat cyclists in the city. Okay, what's the effect of what he says? Well, he aims to demean and degrade these idiots by using the harsh language idiots. He describes their unattractive behaviour, and the aim of that, I would suggest, is to make the reader feel better about themselves. Well, I'm not one of those idiots. So it's kind of getting the reader on side, because they're like, oh, it's just a few people spoiling it for everyone. It's that kind of feeling. Right, so she's sarcastic about the cabmen, and she is sarcastic all the way through lines 1 to 7. That's a really long quotation. You can't copy that whole quotation out in your exam. So what you can do is just pick from lines 1 to 7 when we come to write the paragraph up properly. She also uses verbs, so really similar to what he's doing here, but it's also from the semantic field of hunting. So we've got chased, runs and kill. There are verbs. We've also got sport, exciting, and prey, this idea of running for your life. And what's her point of using these words? It makes the cabmen in London look pathetic, and it makes the ladies on the bikes in the city, remember the focus of the question, it makes them look vulnerable. And the idea is it shames the cabmen for their behaviour. So hopefully you can see here we've got we've got really good comparison here, but a really good contrast here. Here, he's trying to make the reader feel better about themselves. Well, I'm not one of those idiots. Here, it's trying to shame the cabmen for their behaviour. All right. So I filled that one in. For the rest, I've just done some moods. So when you've finished watching this video, if you're revising and you've got the paper printed out, perhaps you could have a go at filling in the rest of this grid using my ideas for the viewpoints and perspectives, the thoughts and feelings of both writers. So I've got that he is warning and advising other road users, whereas she is warning and advising female cyclists. So see if you can find that evidence. And then my last point is he uses a serious, threatening ending, whereas she uses a humorous ending. So that is a difference. How are you going to turn that into a similarity? Pick out your quotations and think about what you're going to say about those. And if you're aiming for the top marks, 7s, 8s, or 9s, maybe instead of filling in this grid, you can use these ideas and go straight into like PEMA paragraphs, remembering to get the method in there. But what I'm going to finish you off with today is turning these 2 rows into a couple of model paragraphs for you and see what you think. This is what I did. Okay, let me unsmallen myself. Okay, so this is what I put. Compare how writers convey their similar perspectives on cycling in the city. In source A, Walker is sarcastic about those people who treat, always got to get the key words from the question in, who treat cyclists in the city with disrespect, explaining that in his view they are, quote, idiots who, as well as treating cyclists badly, might also push onto a train, barge past you on an escalator, recline their plane seat just as the meals are being served. His use of the pejorative word idiots shows how little respect he has for these badly behaved travellers, whilst highlighting his view that city cyclists shouldn't take the idiot's behaviour too personally. He goes on to use a list of verbs, push, barge, recline, to further emphasise that their inconsiderate behaviour is not limited to upsetting cyclists, but is widespread. And now I'm going to do my comparison. So I've done a whole big paragraph on source A and I'm going to compare to source B. The Countess in source B similarly conveys an angry perspective using sarcasm at the beginning in lines 1 to 7. There's my evidence of her article to shame cabmen who treat female city cyclists badly. So again, I've got that link back to the question, cycling in the city, so that the examiner can see that I am well focused. I've used the word similarly to show that I'm linking it back here. But similarly conveys angry, sarcasm, sarcastic, sarcasm, similarly linking it back. Okay, to shame the cabman. She describes their sport using words from the semantic field of hunting: prey, chase, exciting runs, kill. This extended metaphor presents her viewpoint that cabmen are acting like rather pathetic children playing a hunting game whilst jeopardising the lives of female cyclists just for fun. Okay, so you can see that although, again, a bit like question 2, I've talked about the drivers a little bit here, but hopefully by the way that I've worded my answer, I am always linking it back to the topic, cycling in the city. Now, it occurs to me that if you're writing an exam answer, you might want to put these 2 into the same paragraph to really exaggerate and exemplify the comparisons that you're making. But I have personally very big loopy writing, and I think if I did that I'd be going over a whole page and a bit with just 1 paragraph. So I probably would leave it to 2 paragraphs and hope that my examiner will notice this word similarly and the way that I'm linking these 2 ideas together. Now, when you get really, really good at this question, you might be able to do your comparisons simultaneously. And that's amazing if you can. But I think for now, definitely just separate those out and make sure that you're just jumping from source A to source B and then back to source A, back to source B, the way that I have done it in this grid. So source A, then source B, and these are a similar point. Source A, source B, similarity. Source A, source B, similarity, and just jump A, B with a similar point. A, B, different similar point. A, B, different similar point. And I think if you do it like that, you will be setting yourself up for success. As the year unfolds and you get more experienced at doing this, you can start trying to mash those paragraphs together so you are simultaneously comparing. But for now, keep it separate. Okay, next time we're going to be having a look at the writing. So thinking about some ways to plan your writing, and I've done a couple of model paragraphs for you. But for now, have a go at finishing off this question 4. See how you get on, and I'll see you next time for some argumentative writing. Bye.